You meet someone new today. Maybe it's a barista. Maybe it's a stranger on the train. Before they say a single word, your brain has already decided something about them. Trustworthy, dangerous, friendly, cold. You didn't choose this judgment. It happened in less time than it takes to blink. That's not a guess. That's a number scientists have actually measured. 1/10 of a second. That's how long it takes your brain to form a lasting impression of a stranger's face. Not their words, not their actions. Just the shape of their eyes, the angle of their brow, the curve of their mouth. But here's the strange part. You're almost always wrong. Princeton psychologist Alexander Todorov spent years studying this exact moment of judgment. He showed people thousands of unfamiliar faces for just 100 milliseconds each. Barely enough time to register a shape, let alone a personality. And yet, every single participant rated each face on trustworthiness, competence, aggression, with total confidence, as if they actually knew something. They didn't. They couldn't have. The exposure was too short for any real information to come through. But the brain doesn't like uncertainty, so it fills the gap. Fast. Why would evolution build something so reckless? A system that decides who to trust before any real evidence exists. The answer goes back further than cities, further than language maybe. Back to a time when a stranger appearing at the edge of camp was not a social inconvenience. It was a survival event. Your ancestors didn't have police. They didn't have background checks or social media profiles. They had seconds, sometimes less. And in those seconds, the wrong decision could mean violence, theft, disease, or worse. So the brain evolved a shortcut. Not an accurate one, a fast one. Anthropologist Hrdy has written extensively about what she calls the cooperative paradox of early humans. Your ancestors survived precisely because they could form alliances with people outside their immediate family. But cooperation with strangers is dangerous. It requires trust before trust has been earned. So the brain needed a way to estimate risk instantly, using the only data available in that first glance: a face. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because the features your brain reads as trustworthy have almost nothing to do with someone's actual character. Todorov's research found that faces judged as trustworthy tend to share specific traits: slightly raised inner eyebrows, a subtle upward curve at the corners of the mouth, features that structurally resemble a relaxed, non-threatening expression. Faces judged as untrustworthy often have the opposite: lowered brows, downturned mouths, features that resemble anger or aggression, even when the person's actual face is completely neutral and at rest. In other words, your brain isn't reading character, it's reading geometry, and it's mistaking permanent bone structure for temporary emotion. Think about what that means. Someone could have a naturally low brow line, inherited from a parent, present since birth, and strangers will read it as hostility for their entire life. Someone else could have a slightly upturned mouth at rest and be granted trust they haven't earned again and again without ever trying. This isn't fair, but fairness was never the goal. Survival was. A 2014 study led by researcher Christopher Olivola tracked something even stranger. People's snap judgments of political candidates' faces, made in under a second with zero knowledge of their policies, predicted real election outcomes with surprising consistency. Voters weren't evaluating leadership. They were running the same ancient threat detection software their ancestors used to size up strangers approaching the fire. Here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. This system doesn't turn off in the modern world. It just gets pointed at the wrong targets. You use it on resumes with photos attached. You use it in dating apps, swiping in under a second based on a single image. You use it in job interviews, in courtrooms, in classrooms. A judge looking at a defendant's face is running the exact same 100 millisecond circuitry your ancestors used outside a cave 40,000 years ago. The stakes have changed completely. The hardware hasn't changed at all. And it gets even more uncomfortable. Researcher Daniel Hrdy found that this snap judgment is remarkably consistent across cultures, suggesting it isn't something you learned. It's something you were built with. A universal shortcut, baked into the architecture of human perception, regardless of where you grew up or what you were taught about fairness. So what do you do with a system this fast, this confident, and this often wrong? You can't switch it off. No one can. The 100-millisecond judgment fires whether you want it to or not. But knowing it exists changes something important. It means the instant dislike you feel towards someone might be telling you nothing about them and everything about the shape their face happened to be born with. It means the instant comfort you feel around someone else might not be safety. It might just be symmetry. Every time you meet someone new, two things are happening at once. There's the real person, complicated, unknown, impossible to read in an instant. And there's the shortcut your brain runs anyway, built for a world that no longer exists, applied to a world it was never designed for. You met someone today. Before they said a word, you already decided something about them. You were almost certainly wrong, and tomorrow you'll do it again anyway.